Shocker. Colin Cowherd really hates Oklahoma. And I've got a theory behind it. But I want to talk about his thoughts on Oklahoma's SEC schedule and why, honestly, Colin has some points. He may be right in some parts, but overall, Colin's wrong. Let's talk about it. Coming up here in about 10 seconds. What's good, everybody? It's your boy Jay here with Unfair Sports, where we take a pensive approach to the sports conversation. Thanks for pulling up to the YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to talk about Colin Cowherd over at The Herd at Fox Sports, talking about how he thinks Oklahoma is going to disappear into oblivion. And I'm going to point out just how wrong he really is. He's got some points, though, and that's the reason why I listen to Colin. And let me go ahead and give my disclaimer right now. I don't hate Colin like most people do. I enjoy his perspectives because he forces me to think. And by doing that, that allows me to give a true pensive approach when I talk to you all about college sports. And so in this scenario, I thought it was fascinating that he feels like Oklahoma has a chance of going into oblivion, just like Nebraska has over the last 23 years. And so because of that, I had to break down what he was talking about. Now, I'm going to let you all listen to what he has to say first, and then we're going to dive into the meat and potatoes here.
You know, in the career, you're climbing the ladder and you get more power. With more power comes more responsibility, right? You want to be paid more money. All right, but you'll be the first one to get cut if the bosses have to make real decisions. In college football, Texas, Oklahoma join the SEC. SEC's like, we are more powerful than ever. Yeah, and you added revenue, but holy hell, are those schedules going to be tough? Anybody see the schedules yesterday for Florida, Alabama? Yikes. Also, the Big Ten. Joining the Big Ten is USC and UCLA. I got news for you. It's hard enough to beat Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. Good luck at Camp Randall. Now you got to go out and face Lincoln Riley. The downside to adding these teams is it's going to be tougher schedules. Florida's is insane. Texas, Oklahoma, tough schedules. But I was thinking about this, looking at the schedules. I always laugh when, like, Southern guy tells me USC football's dead. That would be like West Coast guy saying Alabama's dead every time they have a downturn. Schools like Ohio State, Alabama, LSU, USC are never dead. Florida State, they're never dead for very long. Because the minute they get the right coach, they're in states that have so many great high school players that they rebound quickly. USC has put together back-to-back really interesting recruiting classes, and they are rolling. LSU with Brian Kelly, they're going to be great. Second year on the job. LSU, Georgia, Bama's a state that, despite its small size, 3.5 million, 4 million people, produces 20, 25 Division I players. There is only one college football program in the last 25 to 30 years that went from a national power, and I mean vying for titles, big brand, TV, to irrelevant. Nebraska. And there are three reasons why. Number one is they're from a state that doesn't produce high school football players. They have to convince every kid who didn't grow up a Husker to be a Husker. That's harder than convincing a kid in L.A. who grew up a Trojan to be a Trojan, or a kid that grew up near New Orleans to be a Tiger fan. Nebraska had to convince every kid that wasn't a Nebraska fan, because most kids are fans of local teams, come to our state. Secondly, they joined the wrong conference. When Nebraska left the state of Texas in the Big 12, they left a lot of recruits who now couldn't watch their sons play. They couldn't get those home games and watch them play. Now they got to fly up, drive up. They joined the wrong conference. So number one, Nebraska lost a legendary coach and was always from a state that didn't produce a lot of high school talent. Number two, they joined the wrong conference. And number three, they couldn't get the coach right. Keep your eye on Oklahoma. Is Oklahoma going to be the second program in our adult lives that disappears? Number one, the state no longer produces big numbers of players. Of the Sooners' 26 signees in their recruiting class, 3 are from the state of Oklahoma. That's having to convince kids in the South, convince kids in Texas, come to us. Secondly, they joined a tougher conference. Like Nebraska, this is going to be harder. Most of those Southern kids have grown up on the SEC. Those football players want to stay with traditional SEC powers. And number 3, in an offensive era, they hired a defensive coach, and he was completely, utterly over his skis. They didn't get the coach right. I'm just saying, I may be wrong. Oklahoma's a great brand. But Lincoln Riley, remember, you don't necessarily leave a great top 6-7 program historically. But why did Brian Kelly leave Notre Dame? And why did Lincoln Riley leave Oklahoma? Both great coaches. Because Brian Kelly knew when he faced Georgia the previous couple of years and lost both times, Georgia had better players. It's hard to convince kids to go to tiny, private, religious overtone Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. It's way easier to get them to go to LSU. He went because of players. As good as Kelly is, you can only do so much when you have the second best players on a field against Bama and Georgia. And why did Lincoln Riley leave? Because he was joining the SEC, looked at it, looked at the Bamas and the Georgias and the LSUs and the Floridas and those states and those kids and their leanings, and USC was wide open. By the way, you think Lincoln Riley didn't have a gut feeling somehow, some way, kind of felt Oklahoma to the SEC was going to be a hard pull? You go into Alabama and Georgia and LSU's backyard, welcome to SEC football. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the 3 things Nebraska and Oklahoma have in common, states that don't produce a lot of high school stars, joined a conference that looks like it could be trouble for the program, and couldn't get the coach.
So as you hear, Colin believes that the biggest problem from Oklahoma is 3 things. Number 1, like Nebraska, they're in a state that doesn't produce a whole bunch of blue chip caliber players, in which I disagree. I do feel like Oklahoma produces more of those in comparison to Nebraska, and only because football is life in Oklahoma. Football is life like it is in the South. It's part of the South. I mean, we're considered more so Midwest-ish, but football matters in Oklahoma. The second thing he said is moving to a new conference that could put you into oblivion. Did Colin forget that Oklahoma as a state did not leave the state of Texas as far as a connecting state? Like, yes, out of our 26 recruits, majority of them came from Texas. Texas has a surplus of people as well as players. And we do a very good job of recruiting them up there because traveling down to Texas on a regular basis, players like that. Parents like that. You're guaranteed to be able to go to Oklahoma, OU, Texas down at the Cotton Bowl every year. You're going to see your kid play. I don't see where that is an issue, but recruits are still going to come through. The last one I thought was fascinating is that he stated that Oklahoma got it wrong on the coach. Oklahoma hired a defensive-minded coach, and he feels like they got it wrong. Let's talk about how wrong Colin is on that. He has a understood thought process. Like, I understand what he's thinking there. You bring in a defensive coach in an era where offense is key, and for a lot of schools like Nebraska, they brought in Scott Frost. They brought in some other coaches, brought back Tom Osborne. It didn't work out because, they had defensive-minded coaches and Scott Frost is offensive coordinator. I digress on that. And it just did not work out. Understood. But the difference is Oklahoma still has Texas recruits. We've been getting Florida recruits for years. We've been getting players out of Georgia like crazy. Oklahoma has been recruiting across the country forever. And they've been pulling all kinds of players from California. They've been pulling players from Washington, D.C., from Florida, from Georgia, from Louisiana. They're getting them from everywhere. And now playing in the SEC is going to do nothing but make it even better because now those Florida parents can just drive to Auburn and watch their kid play, which is a lot shorter trek than it is going into the state of Texas. That's where he's got that wrong. His thought process around offensive-minded and defensive-minded coaches make sense, but the problem is that there's a flaw in that, and this is where the flaw comes in. Who's the successful coaches in college football right now? You have Nick Saban, defensive-minded. Kirby Smart, defensive-minded. Dabo Swinney, even though he's an offensive guy, lets his defensive guys do their job. Your key coaches, Ed Orgeron, when he was there, I mean, even though a lot of us have questions, he's a defensive guy. Defensive-minded coaches are successful. The question is, what do you do on the offensive side? And what made Nick Saban so successful is that he is very innovative. He's willing to follow the trends and go after offensive coordinators that will dominate on the offensive side. But this is where that flaw comes into the thinking. You hire an offensive coach, your defense is going out the window. We've seen it play out that way. For those that have watched this channel numerous times, I'm also a big Tennessee fan. It's my other team. I love the Vols. You can see behind me, I have a Neyland Stadium Lego set that I'm put together to go along with my Gaylord Memorial Stadium that will be behind me come this football season. Tennessee's offense was amazing under Josh Heupel, former Oklahoma quarterback. Their defense was questionable. We questioned everything about that defense. And it showed in a lot of the big games. And so when Oklahoma struggled in the playoffs, it wasn't the offense was the problem, it's the defense. If you can get your defense, if Brent Venables can turn this defense like he did at Clemson into a top 40 defense, there's a good chance this team makes playoffs. There's a very good chance because it's going to be really hard to beat a team when the defense is as good as what we've seen Clemson do. You also have to have a generational quarterback, and we've learned that. We've got an offensive coordinator that produces top 15 offenses in the country, Jeff Lebby. He did it last season with this Oklahoma team, number 13 in yards per game. So overall, we've got everything we need on the offense side of the ball. The run game is strong, over 200 yards a game. We just got to get the defense going. The offensive line is consistent. We just got to get the defense going. So for Colin to believe, in which we all understand why he hates Oklahoma. He hates Russell Westbrook for the Oklahoma City Thunder when he was here. He had beef with Baker Mayfield and the Sooners. He just hates the fact that the Seattle Supersonics moved to Oklahoma. And ever since then, he's just raged war on Oklahoma. He really did start back then. Go look him up. 2008, when the Thunder got here, that's when Colin really started to pay attention to Oklahoma. Everything Oklahoma. And he's been attacking them ever since. And I get it. But that's where the flaw in his logic has come in. You don't have to have a deep offensive-minded coach to be successful. I mean, Lincoln's doing some wonderful things at USC, but what's his big problem? Defense starts to fall apart real quick. If you have a defensive-minded coach that lets the offense do their job, like Nick Saban did, as well as what Kirby Smart's done, you can be successful. Being the CEO of everything doesn't mean you got to micromanage everything out there. And Brent Venables has proven that. He lets Jeff Lebby do his job. He also focuses heavily on getting the players that will run the scheme that has been proven to be successful when he was running things at Oklahoma as well as at Clemson. You got to get the right guys and the right mentality. And Brent Venables has grown from his time here at Oklahoma from back when a lot of you fans wanted him fired. But we learned as soon as he was gone, man, our defenses really went down the pooper. And it's more so development, growth, and training. And we've got all that back. So Colin, sorry, bro. This is one of those definite moments of when Colin was wrong. Hop in the comments, let your boy know what your thoughts on. If you are new to the channel and never seen us before, hit that like, subscribe, and the bell notification. We'd love to have you join the family. YouTube says to watch one of these videos here. Got more videos coming down the line, and we'll talk very, very soon.